Hi, Sean McLaughlin here, CEO of Alaska Gear Company, and I just want to introduce this video. It's me interviewing Lonnie, our test pilot for many, many years here at Alaska Gear Company. Lonnie is just, he's a super cub, bush flying force of nature. We've worked with him now on a lot of projects. He is just, he has dedicated his life to flying super cubs and flying them in the bush. So I really hope you enjoy this video. So hi, Sean McLaughlin here, CEO of Alaska Gear Company. I'm here with Lonnie. Or as we call him here at Alaska Gear Company, our secret weapon. Lonnie is here collecting his plane out of our hangar here in Palmer, Alaska. He's about to head out for the spring skiing season. Right, Lonnie? Did I got this right?
Yeah.
You got this right? Okay.
Pretty close.
And what we're going to do is kind of introduce you to Lonnie a little bit because Lonnie is, as I said, our secret weapon. He's helped us develop the new TiSHX that's on the market right now. And he's been working with us for how many years now, Lonnie?
Been going on 5 years for the shock.
5 years, and you've worked on the titanium gear with us.
Before that, yeah.
Before that, yep.
Yep.
So he's our test pilot. He's the person who tells us what needs to change, how it needs to change, whether it works or not. We even had something break on you once, didn't we? Didn't we? In some of the early tests. We don't talk about that?
No comment.
No comment. But Lonnie is the man. So we're here today to talk about the TiSHX. And first of all, Lonnie, if you could just tell everybody a little bit more about yourself. Like why you're so awesome. That's not a good place to start.
So I'm a career bush pilot. I've got over 18,000 hours in Super Cubs and over 50,000 off-airport landings that I logged. And it's basically what I've done for my adult life. And it's my priority is to find new places and crazy places to land. So that's how we got into all these advances, and especially lightweight and better equipment is the need for it.
Wait, Lonnie, you got to give me those numbers one more time. Give those stats. Give me the stats on yourself again. How many hours?
Just over 18,000.
How many landings?
Just in Super Cubs.
Okay. And then landings?
Over 50,000 off-airport landings, not total landings. That's just in the bush, yeah.
This is why we listen to Lonnie. This is why we listen to Lonnie.
So, yeah, my priority is to find new places to land and crazy places. So that's part of the reason for developing this equipment, especially the shocks, yeah.
And you work currently with Ultima Thule Launch?
Yeah, I work for Ultima Thule Outfitters. Yeah.
And that season starts up here, and you'll run right through the summer?
Around June 1st, yeah.
And don't you go off to Africa as well, right? Every year?
In the winter, yeah.
In the winter? And
For
you fly
3 months.
And you fly Cubs there as well?
Super Cubs as well. I've been doing that for 16 years.
Okay, so with that background, when you came to us and said, hey, you need to, well, first of all, you came to us and said you need to make titanium gear, and we did that. We listened. And we worked with you on that. When you came to us and said someone needs to design the best shock on the market, a better shock, what was the issue? What did you notice? You've tried all the shocks, right?
Yes.
And what was happening to you in the field? What did you experience that you thought could?
Well, there's been some advancements in the last 4 or 5 years with real shocks, right? Yeah. But none of them were as good as they could be, and of course I knew that.
And you probably started out with bungees, right?
Originally, yeah.
And then
bungees,
you went
AOSSs, yep, just like everybody else.
Yeah. Okay. So, and how did you know there was something? How did you know that the current products out there could be better? Like, what made you think they could be better?
Well, for one, I was intimately familiar with gas shocks through snowmobiles and off-road bikes. So,
okay, so that's part of your background.
Motocross, yeah. So I knew how they're supposed to work. So when the first series of these style of shocks came out and I started using them, I knew that they weren't as good as they could be because they weren't working like they should be.
Got it.
Makes sense?
And yeah, and can you give us some examples of that? Like, how did you know? Like, what were some of the characteristics?
Valving issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, they're just not working to their potential.
Okay, got it. All right, so we start working with you. We start this whole process. We bring in engineers from those other markets, right, from those other industries. And you start working with Doug Keller.
Yeah. One of the key things we did was find Wayne. And I did that through a contact of mine in California that was big into the off-road industry.
Yeah, and Wayne is the engineer that helped us with the valving.
Wayne is the first and foremost shock building valving expert on this planet. He's based out of California.
So he is to shocks what you are to Super Cubs, basically.
He is one of the best without a doubt. Yeah, and he was fundamental to this. Yeah.
And we've been working with him now. Yeah, he's been coming up here and working on with us for a long time now.
Super guy. Yeah.
Okay, so what happened next? So we get Wayne on board. What are the issues? What are the things we're looking at then? And how do we make this shock? How do we make this shock the best? How do we make it better than everything else out there?
Well, again, I was very intimate with the shock systems available.
Yeah.
So we knew exactly where their weak points were and what we could do better, and that's basically what we did.
Okay, so tell me some of those things. What are some of the things we did?
Well, first and foremost, so our shocks, one of the things unique about our new shock is that it has a much more robust, longer spring to accommodate heavier aircraft gross weight, okay? And because it's longer, we can also play with the preload, initial preload on it to adjust the firmness of the shock without limiting travel, okay? Does that make sense?
Totally does, yep.
That's something that was not formerly available. So we started with the spring.
Yep.
Started with a better spring. The other problem we solved was a nitrogen leaking problem.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So we redesigned the shock and properly engineered it with the free-floating piston, just like the competition has. But we eliminated all the leaking issues. Okay, so when it's assembled, it is charged with nitrogen at assembly, but there is no way for that nitrogen to go away. So it is truly a lifetime seal, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And the nitrogen's super crucial. Most people don't understand what the nitrogen does in the shock. The nitrogen does not affect the way the shock works as far as the compression or rebound or the preload on the spring. It works a free-floating piston in the shock because as the shock travels out or extends, it creates a void in the oil, right? And if you do not fill that void with something, then you get air, and air causes cavitation in the piston or the valving, right? So the piston, if this is the end of the shock, here's the piston, here's the nitrogen. The piston goes like this as the shock travels, right? Okay? So our shock has 3 times the amount of nitrogen capacity than is standardly used, right? So it's proper and it works a lot better.
And no leaking, so no Schrader valve.
Yeah, no leak down or whatever, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, what else do we change in it?
The other thing we changed, again, is back to the spring. So our spring actually has an internal sleeve or a guide that protects the spring from the housing, from what we call the shock tube. So the spring cannot get into the housing, okay, and wear off aluminum and contaminate the oil. Okay, and more than that, the guide also acts as a travel limiter, which is very crucial because our spring never ever goes to coil bind. When it runs out of travel, it is limited by that polymer.
Yeah, I remember us testing this out.
Yeah,
right?
and it also works like a more conventional stop on high performance shocks, like a shock bumper or a stop. When it actually does bottom, it goes into that polymer, right? The spring never goes to coil. Coil to coil are what they call stack. And the reason for that is if the spring goes solid, goes coil to coil too many times, the spring breaks, okay? It wears the spring out. They're not actually made to go solid, okay? Does that make sense?
That totally does, yep. I remember us testing a lot of that stuff, so.
Yeah, yeah, so the spring is really one of the biggest improvements. It's just a lot more advanced, better rate spring.
Our shock did come out slightly heavier than some of the other shocks like that, and this is the trade-off, right?
Yeah, it's a little heavier, which was a huge frustration, especially for Doug, our engineer.
Yeah.
And to Doug's credit, Doug did everything he possibly could. One thing a lot of people won't get and maybe never get is that there are only 2 steel components in our shock, and that is the spring and the valve stack shims in the valving. Literally everything else is aluminum and titanium. That's it. And a lot of people ask, why couldn't you use a titanium spring? And the reason for that is if we were to use a titanium spring, it's not that we couldn't. One, it's not the most ideal spring material to use for our application. But if we would have used one, it would have been significantly larger in diameter.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. So again, it's always a trade-off or whatever. But yeah, that's the only reason why is the spring. Yeah. But believe me, it's well worth the trade-off. Yeah.
Very good. Anything else on construction you want to point out, Lonnie, of the spring? Or of anything, of any part of the shock?
No, like I said, we've covered the nitrogen, the leak down issue, the nitrogen, the spring, the spring guide sleeve, right?
And so over the last couple of years, we've brought you a whole bunch of different configurations and springs and valving scenarios. Do you have any idea how many landings you've done on this stuff to help us test it?
I'd have to ballpark total through, we had 3 prototype. This is number 3, right?
Yeah.
So this one I have just over 1,700 cycles on.
Okay.
And prior to that,
you're talking about these right here.
our latest, the ones that we STC'd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have 1,700 of those, and then
Yeah, prior to that, I mean, it would have been 4 times that over the course of the years. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, a lot of testing. Yeah.
So Lonnie, I got to thank you for all the hard work and stuff you've put into these. It's
been very, very rewarding. It's like I told Doug, the engineer. Doug and I first conceived that titanium gear, or you thought about it about 8 years ago now, and we were actually going to go it alone. We actually stuck our nose into it, and that's how long it's been, and the shock's been going.
Then you started working on me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Doug said, I know somebody that
might be crazy enough. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for the return. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Lonnie, thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful spring flying season here, and we're looking forward to your continued feedback on it.
Yeah.
And then for all of you, we're in final production preparation here for this shock. We're confirming our whole PMA process to build them. Our first initial run of these shocks is going to be 50 sets, and all the parts are now arriving in Palmer for final assembly. And you can see more information, videos, background information about the shocks, etc., under TiSHX on our website. So at Alaska Gear Company. Thanks, Frank. Oh, I'm sorry. More?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go.
Not quite done yet. I've got one last thing to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is not a joke. So, one thing everybody needs to know is that when Wayne came out to Alaska and we did the final valving on this shock.
And that was last summer?
Last summer,
yep.
Right? I had always hoped to make the shock better than the competition, and I knew we could do that. But I can tell you that when Wayne was done, when we were done in the field and he had done the final valving on the shock, even I was blown away by how much better the shock was, because it far exceeded my expectations of what was going to be better. Yeah. So that's pretty wild.
That's high praise. And Wayne's coming up here to help us with confirming our final assembly here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So we'll be seeing him again.
Just wanted to throw that in because, like I said, Wayne exceeded my expectations is what we could do.
He's been a great partner. We've had a lot of great partners in this project. Yeah. Okay, Lonnie, anything else?
That's it. Now I'm done.
By the way, this is Lonnie's plane behind us, so if you want to take a look, this is the Beast right here, the one he flies. And you can see right here, for all the work he does with us, of course, he gets titanium gear, and he gets us out of the shocks as part of the package. Of course, the ones that are coming out for production, this is pre our sort of finishing touches to them. So the ones that come out will be gold, and they'll have writing on the shock can.
These are the ultralights, so they're lighter.
Yeah, exactly. Lonnie, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Safe flying.
Yeah.